Give me money.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into the third episode of the Ain't It Funky podcast. My guest today is Jack Francis. Jack is a session drummer and teacher based out of London in the UK. He is a seasoned pro when it comes to touring and studio work. He is currently the drummer for UK alt-rock band Blockade, and he's played in bands who have supported acts like Creeper, Holding Absence, and Static Dress, amongst others. In our conversation, Jack shared very valuable insight into his process in coming up with tasty parts in the studio, how he manages not to compare himself too much to people on social media, his approach to teaching, and more. Jack also has a YouTube channel where he posts drum covers, product reviews, and vlogs. Go follow his channel at Jack Francis Drums. Also go follow him on Instagram at thejack.francis. If you enjoy this episode, please subscribe wherever you're listening. The video version is available on YouTube as well. Thanks for tuning in and enjoy. All right, Jack Francis, welcome into the podcast.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Dude, thank you for being here.
No worries.
So, Jack, take me back to the beginning. What got you into music originally?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I started out, my parents always said to me that I always had this habit of tapping and, tapping to rhythms in the radio from the car and all those kind of things. So, yeah, it came naturally, I think, to me, the rhythm side of things. I think it was something that I just always loved, hearing different styles of music. My parents were great lovers of all styles and genres of music, so I've anything from Motown to classic rock to boy bands and all those kind of things, so I think I just naturally had a sort of a calling to music at a young age. And yeah, my parents got me my first little drum kit when I was 3 years old, and yeah, I don't think I think there was like 2 or 3 years where I maybe didn't touch a drum kit. And then as I got kind of into my early kind of teenage years, I would say, around sort of 10, 11, I started picking sticks up again and started getting lessons, started really, really starting to dive into the whole finding out who I loved and, who was going to be my idols and that kind of thing, really. So yeah, I always had a love for music, and always had an appreciation for the skill and the talent of others. So yeah, so that's probably how it kind of started, was just the absolute love of music.
Oh, amazing! And who were the drummers that like struck a chord for you?
Ooh, so I used to sort of listen to a lot of old school rock. My dad was a massive Queen, Thin Lizzy.
Okay.
I suppose like you're the likes of Roger Taylor, Brian Downey, and people like that sort of sparked my love for it. I would say then, as I sort of grew up, my love for drummers started becoming more into my own findings in music. So, the likes of Chad Smith, Travis Barker. Also, I was really, really into my jazz when I was at school. So Buddy Rich. Quite an odd one that some people may ask me sometimes why this is, but Ian Pace, another one from Deep Purple.
Right, yeah.
He was very much into his jazz as well. Yeah, and the likes of, the old classics, Stuart Copeland, all those kind of guys. They fueled my love for the skill they had. And I think those kind of guys really brought me to loving it even more. So, yeah.
Right. And you said in your teenage years, you started to take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah.
Is that, I guess you then kind of got into your rudiments and started getting a bit more into technical
So when I started learning to play, I was getting taught by at the time, a session player who was in the industry in the UK. He was a really, really lovely guy. I think after a little while, he had that kind of forever kind of career going of just bouncing between artists, and then I think it kind of fizzled out for him. I don't think it kind of carried on as much as some people want it to. So he kind of just ended up in a regular job kind of thing. But yeah, he just kind of taught me the ins and outs and how to read, actually how to write music out as well, which was something that I was always kind of curious about. I never really knew how to do it. So yeah, I found it interesting. And yeah, I had about 4 or 5 years worth of lessons, about twice a week for 4 or 5 years. And yeah, and then I just continued my love for playing when I was in school. And then I eventually went on to study at university. So I studied creative musicianship at the British Institute of Modern Music.
Right.
So yeah, I'd done a lot of studying of my music and also a lot of playing. So it's kind of a bit of both, really, a bit of being taught and also teaching myself through playing.
Right. And so through BIM, is that because I know you've been around kind of the touring circuit quite a bit?
Yeah.
Supported bigger bands.
Yeah.
I know Holding Absence,
Yeah.
Creeper.
Yep, that's it.
So is that where you got, kind of got into those gigs? Is that through BIM?
No, actually, that was through friends. That was just through contact making
Okay.
and a lot of networking and a lot of kind of. I'm not afraid to kind of just talk to people. I'm not afraid to just kind of just. If there's a situation where I kind of see someone and I think, oh, you're doing like amazing stuff and you're really doing great things. I always try to have a little chat with them and just ask what the kind of the tricks of the trade are, I guess, and how they've got to their position there in kind of like. Me and you talking about music now. It's kind of like I just enjoy talking to people, finding out the ins and outs and what you should do and what you shouldn't do. So yeah, it's interesting. It's very interesting. But yeah, that's just through networking. Was talking to a couple of fellow drummers. I had a really good friend of mine. For people who are listening, a really good friend of mine is Adam Breeze. He's the he's on Instagram. He's called a drummer Breeze, and he is the drummer for he was a band called Raven Eye. And I think he now plays for the thrash metal band Wargasm, I think.
Okay.
Which is a UK thrash metal kind of new metal band. So I kind of got onto the support with Holding Absence, Static Dress, Creeper through helping him. He unfortunately caught COVID during COVID, and when everything kind of slightly opened up again, there was the Creeper tour in the winter, and he needed someone to fill in for him. So I rose to the challenge, and I was given 48 hours notice to learn a whole set.
Oh wow!
And then go basically start the UK tour about 2 days later. So so I didn't have that much time to practice a lot of the material. And that kind of, as much as I like that kind of music, at that time in my career, I wasn't really kind of playing that kind of music. So for me to kind of be throwing the deep end there was a big experience for me. But it was a great experience because I met a lot of great people, made a lot of contacts, and from then on just branched out and continued my love for session work.
Oh, amazing, man! And then, so you've worked a lot in studios as well. I know you worked in Abbey Road with was it Tiffany Twisted?
That's right. Yeah, that was one of my own bands. We recorded a 5-track EP at Abbey Road Studio 3 when we was on a label that she was on, and it was just basically a live EP, all recorded in the same room. That was a great experience. I worked with some really, really cool people there, and I think the sound engineer that was working with at the time, I think, if I can remember, his name was Chris Bolter, I think, or something like that. But he was the mixing engineer on the probably, is it Something from Nothing, the Foo Fighters album?
Oh wow!
Yeah, so he was the mixing engineer.
Sonic Highways,
album. Sonic Highways, that's the one.
Yeah.
He was the mixing engineer on that, or one of them, I should say.
Amazing.
And he was such a lovely guy to work with. It's just attention to detail was amazing. Yeah, I've done Abbey Road, and I do a lot of regular work at a studio in central London called JBJ, which is they've had the likes of Stormzy, Dave, sort of people like that have worked there. 1975. Quite a lot of people have just passed through. It's like a residential studio, so you can also stay there and sort of like rent it out for like sort of however long and live in the apartment upstairs, which is like really like state of the art kind of London townhouse, and then the studio is the first and second like sort of basement, as you would call it, which is they're kind of where they have the studio and the live room. So yeah, it's really cool. It's really cool. So
sweet.
yeah, I've done my fair share of studio work and recordings all around. Yeah.
Oh, incredible, man! Yeah, so a lot of live, a lot of studio sessions.
Yeah. That's my favorite kind, is to do studio live. I think I love the adrenaline that you get when you play live. I think it's a great experience. I think it's wonderful. But being in the studio, I think, is great too, because it really allows you to bring out your creative side. Doesn't kind of stop you from trying different things out. That's kind of really in all honesty the place where you should try ideas out, because that's a lot of people say you should try ideas out live. I personally don't agree. I think it kind of it could work. I'm not saying it won't, but also at the same time it might not work. So I'd always kind of use them as your studio, if you have some time in the studio, to generate ideas, get more creative in there, and then kind of take them from there to the stage. So you kind of have them prepped, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of like Thomas Lang's sentiment: don't practice when you play, and don't play when you practice, right?
Exactly. Exactly.
When you're playing, you should just let go, especially playing live.
Yeah.
You should come prepared.
Yeah.
If you've had enough time to prepare, obviously.
Big time.
But come as well prepared as you can, and then just let loose and just let whatever happens happen.
Mate, massively. It's the whole kind of the art of the drumming world. I suppose every world, really, even guitarists, bass players, everything is to naturally, practice the things that you wouldn't want to get wrong on stage before you go on stage. When you're playing on stage, that's your chance to polish off the things that you can play. I think you'd rather probably not want to go up there and make a ton of mistakes, because then you're probably not, if you're in a session world especially, you're not going to get rehired again, because that's not really the time and place to be doing those kind of things. So yeah, it's kind of a different situations and reasons why you can and can't do that sort of thing. Yeah
it's very true. No, I know that from my experience that if something's not, as you said before, if there's certain parts or maybe a part where you're getting hung up and you're like, it's kind of like when you've practiced it in the practice room, you've prepared it, and it's like, it's good enough.
Yeah.
but then the adrenaline kicks in at the gig, the nerves, the adrenaline, that you're in that moment. Yeah. And then it's almost like if you haven't prepared it 110%, it's almost sure to fail. It's almost sure to
Mate, massively.
You're gonna go, no, it didn't quite, quite nail it.
No, massively. Yeah, that's like I say, it's always better to have your stuff prepared before you go into any situation. So I think a great thing about that is it makes you look, I suppose it makes you stand out a little bit better to the other people that possibly maybe auditioning for the same role. I think it's just, shows your your attention to detail, and the fact that it actually shows that you've done your homework and you've practiced. So yeah.
For sure. And when you're preparing for a gig that you've gotten, is it, do you utilize like the reading and writing that you mentioned before? Do you utilize that a lot to
sometimes
prepare?
Sometimes. I wouldn't say I use it all the time. Sometimes when you're kind of called upon last minute to do things, you don't really have an awful lot of time to kind of sit and map it all out, write it down and get it to where if you had a little bit more time, you'd be able to do that, and it'd be lovely because you could just get it all written out and know exactly note for note what you're playing. I think a lot of the time in the session world, it's all really kind of just it's getting to know everything in a short space of time, and it's literally a case of if someone sends you a track to listen to or a couple of tracks to listen to, it's about how you're going to use your time wisely to learn those kind of and I always find the fundamentals, getting the fundamentals down, the basic structure is always the sort of as I say, the way it should be done. It should just be, you learn the basics, everything else will come naturally. And
Right.
also there's no need to add that extra flair, on the get-go. I think anytime you do an audition for anything, session-wise, or just generally when you're going to play in a situation, you should always just approach it as that is, the best you're going to get in that moment.
Yeah.
And you're just going to give it your 110%, and whatever comes out, as long as you can show the sort of, I suppose the person that's hired you or the artist that you've done your homework. You've done your full understanding of what they've asked for. But as you play more and more, you'll develop more of the kind of things that they are looking for, and you'll settle into the role a bit better, I think.
For sure. And leave the chops at home.
That's it. Yeah, leave the chops. I'm going to say, I must admit, I'm not a very, very an amazing chops person. It sounds mental to say in this current day and age for drummers. I think there's a lot of sort of drummers in the current, sort of social media world and the current world that are very sort of, everything needs to be slightly chop driven. And for me, I'm very old school. I'm not very like, I must admit, I think there was more things I spent time on in my practicing than learning how to chop. I think I was more the kind of drummer that would sit and really just sit on the click and just lock in with the click. I wouldn't chop. I wouldn't show off. I'd just do what's comfortable, but play to the music, not play past that. Because I think for me, it's within my natural ability to just play to the music. Yeah. And as you develop through playing more and more, you can then get comfortable, and then you can start adding your little flair and your little bits and pieces that you want to add. But I've never ever been one for chops. I wouldn't know where to start. I know what they look like. I know, rudiments. I know all those kind of things, and it's all really just a piece of putting them together and placing them around the drum kit. But I think a lot of drummers kind of spend nowadays a lot of time on kind of wanting their chops to stand out than actually concentrating on the fundamentals of what a drummer's about, which is keeping it together. It's just holding the groove down, holding the beat down, keeping, always being on that one, always locking in with every other musician. Because as they say always, if you're not in time, no one else is going to be in time. So the best thing is that if you're locked in and you're there and you're just present and you're supporting everything else is just going to sound and run smoothly. So yeah, it's another little point for you, is I just never have been a chops kind of guy, really. I would never say I'm good at chops. If anyone ever asks me for a drum battle or a chop battle, don't ask, because I'll just turn around and say you win straight away, because I know my limits, and it certainly isn't chopping.
Right. So if anybody ever hired you for a gospel gig,
by all means, please hire me for a gospel gig. But you're just going to get my natural flair. You're going to get what comes with hiring me, which is, sticking true to the music and playing to what's kind of, I suppose, the foundation of what you're trying to produce. I think if you go too overboard too quickly, you kind of lose the idea of why you're there. I think, that's the only way. I think it's different for gospel drummers, must admit. I think they're phenomenal. Like one of my favorite guys at the minute to watch is a guy called J. Rod Sullivan.
Oh yeah, he's amazing. Yeah.
I find that guy absolutely. I sit there and I watch his videos and I go, wow! Like to play with the attention to detail and the clarity and just the precision would be amazing. But I just know within my own limits, he's his own person. I'm my own person, and that's what makes us different, and that's what makes every drummer in the industry different, is we all bring something to the table that maybe the other person might not have kind of, sort of practiced as much as you have. So
Very
you
true.
can definitely see that he's got the pocket, he's got the groove, and he's got the chops, which is great. All three things that you'd love to have, but sometimes somewhere down the line, one of those has been worked on a lot more than the other. So I think, but I think the foundation of it all is just the basic, locking in with the groove and keeping it together. So I've always been true to that. I've always just kind of, with all the work I do, all the recording, it starts with just the utmost basic groove, an idea, and then it develops itself over the course of recording, or even just live show playing. Just play what I'm told to play.
Right.
And then as I get comfortable with the musician, as they start trusting me a little bit more, then I start bringing out the kind of flair and the stuff that they kind of, they're looking for.
Yeah.
But at the same time, within reason. You're not stepping over the boundary too quickly and trying to show off too much. So I think that's how I've always looked at those kind of things.
Would you say you've learned more playing true to parts that people have sort of assigned to you, or if you've been in a studio and a producer has maybe said, please play it this particular way? Do you think maybe you've learned more than actually sitting down and like practicing and pulling stuff apart?
It's a very good question, actually. Never really kind of thought about it like that. I think really for me it's kind of like, if the more time I have on my hands, the more time I will dive into something, and I will sort of spend time mapping it out, basic structure first, followed by all the little sort of ghost notes, any sort of rudiments in between, or any fills that are quite iconic in the song that need to be there. Then obviously, try and play them as true to the original as possible. But actually diving into my honestly, I must admit, my way of kind of operating when it comes to someone throwing something my way is I can't believe I'm about to say this, really, but it's quite shocking. Like, I think it's just, I find myself in a kind of I'll get myself too quickly into a really bad headspace if I start to overanalyze and overthink what someone's given me. I think the best way to go about it is to just listen twice through the whole way and walk away. Because it's like every bit of music that you listen to, by the fourth or fifth listen, you kind of got it. You kind of got the generic basic down, the fundamental beat down. And then as time goes on and you listen and play it more and more, you start to hear those kind of details that need to come out a little bit more. And I think with me, when someone passes me set amount of music to learn for a set or for a studio session or something like that, it's generally just a case of listening to what they want, taking it all on board, then listening to their music that they have previously made and have released, and kind of see the direction they're taking, that new sound they're going for, and think, right, if I'm going to listen to this as an average listener, what am I going to apply to this? That someone out there who is in my position, I was listening to all those great bands back in the early days, something is going to be stand out and is going to make them go, "Ooh, that was cool. That's really nice." That's it. I suppose in a way it complements the song. Right. You don't want something that's going to be too kind of, you can tell they've just gone in there and just gone off the cuff. That's what they're going to do. They've done it now. Can't change it. I think I do when I'm doing studio work, I overanalyze everything too quickly, and I think I've learned myself after doing that to not do that so much. I think it's just about going in and doing whatever comes out in that moment is naturally what your ability and your brain is wanting to develop in that moment. I think that's why so many people, years and years later down the line, after they listen back to their first ever songs they put drums on, or bass or guitar or vocals, they always see that development from the first song you've put out to the most recent song you've put out. You can see that kind of the development process through it all. So I think that's just a crucial thing. And like I said, I'm the worst when someone passes me music to learn. The first thing I do is just play it on repeat and just listen to it. I don't sit at kit at all. I don't think that's necessary until you've really opened your mind to how it should be, and then a couple of playthroughs, see how you get on, and then I always find sort of a couple of days before you need to go to whatever it may be, show or or a recording session, you spend like 2-3 days really just smashing it out. You know what I mean? And you just really to the point where you actually are sick and tired of hearing it. Because then when you get into the studio, you will have that moment of, have I done enough? Am I going to remember this? But actually, the way in which musicians work on a general kind of note is it's in your natural ability to play what you've heard and what you know. So you're just going to go and do that. So that's kind of my outlook on those kind of things, is just do what comes out in that moment, because you're always going to change things that you do further down the line you go. So it doesn't really matter in that moment. You know what I mean? Music should be a natural thing. Shouldn't be a forced thing. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. Very smart. Very good way about going about it. Yeah.
That's the best way. Like I say, my practice kind of regime is not the best, but it's the kind of way, I think, without getting yourself too in a rut too quick. It's the best way to do it. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
But you've mentioned practice. Let's talk a little bit about practice. When you go to practice, because I feel like everybody kind of has their own method. I've seen a lot of YouTube videos on different, big names, and their kind of practice regime. When you go to intentionally practice something, how do you go about it? Are you writing stuff down with like, how much BPM on the metronome, or are you more of like I'm going to break down, I don't know, this one thing and just practice this one thing for like an hour, or how do you go about it?
I think I've never really been one for a massive regime. I've never been one for kind of, my practice kind of is like, I'll go down, I'll kind of concentrate on something that I really want to kind of work on. I think if you over practice, I think you don't see the fun in it anymore. I think if there's too much, like I said earlier about analysing things too much, too quickly, everyone's natural ability is wanting to get it down like quick. Like you want to get something, you see a drummer out there on YouTube or Instagram or something like that, and they play this fill and you go, oh my God, that sounded wicked. How do I do that? So you go back and you slow the video down and you try and see all like where they're playing, what drums they're playing, where they're placing their sticking, their rudiment, all that kind of thing. And then you give it a go yourself. It just doesn't sound the same. But the reason it doesn't sound the same is because you're trying to make it sound like what you've heard. And you got to remember how much practice that person's put in to get in that feel to that level of playing the book, player ability. For me, I wouldn't be able to take a fill off someone straight away unless it's basic as anything, and go, I can do that. Because no one, if you can, congratulations, good on you. But really and truly, and a natural ability for most people, you're going to give yourself sort of a day or two to analyze something like that before you can actually even fundamentally play what is needed to bring that to life. And the whole kind of slowing it down, bring it right down to like, I don't know, 80 BPM. I've always been a sucker for things like that. I've always been like, if I'm learning something, I'll bring it right down to the most painful BPM you could ever imagine until I'm going to get it to the BPM where it should be. And, after a good couple of goes, you can kind of see yourself increase by 5, 10, 15 BPM, and you think to yourself, oh, I'm getting there. But it's everyone's natural ability to want to play it exactly perfect straight away. And it just doesn't work. So my practice is always just like, I teach as well, so when I teach my students, I literally am just like, right, we're gonna start this rudiment or this groove, because I think my youngest student is 6 years old. Like he's phenomenal for 6-year-old. He's phenomenal. He's so into drums. It's great. Do you know what I mean? For someone who's been into drums their whole life, to see a 6-year-old just like never have musical ability and then just suddenly be like, I love this, and naturally just have the rhythm and the talent for it. It's great. But even with them, I'm like, you got to break it down, I've always said, like, when you're practicing something, split it in half. So even if you're practicing, say, just if for a 6-year-old, like when you're first starting out, you're just going to teach them the basic groove, kick on the 1, kick on the 3, snare on 2 and 4, 8th notes, hats, easy as pie. You know what I mean? For someone like us, because we've done it. But for a 6-year-old, he thinks to himself, what? What is that? Do you know what I mean? I say, look at it like this, and break it down into 2 4 beats. Okay, so you've got 1/8 notes, but you split it into 2 4s. Okay, so you've got your 1 and 2 and then your 3 and your 4 and, right? And you split it right down the middle, and you keep repeating that 1 and 2 and until you've got it locked in. And then you do the same, vice versa, 3 and 4 and then you just take that middle parting out, put it together, and happy days. You've got your beat. You know what I mean? You can play it now, and by 10th, 11th go, solid. But with everything, you should do that. Even if it's a rudiment, like a 6-stroke roll, paradiddle, whatever you're kind of trying to put out on the kit. Even when you're trying to work out your placement, you should be breaking it in half. You'd be taking a 6-stroke roll, and you should be doing 3 and 3. Right. And then basically putting the 3 and 3 together to make the 6, and then you kind of, I see. So a lot of people have the sort of the ability to overdo it too quickly, and start adding that extra note in. There was always that extra note that sneaks in. They say, "Oh, I'm going to play a 6-stroke roll." It's like, okay, they play a 6-stroke, they end up playing a 7 or 8. It's like, where did those 2 extra come from? I don't understand. So I find, for me, when I'm reading something, it's about splitting it in 2, breaking it into 2, and then developing it as you kind of piece the. It's a puzzle. Reading music is a puzzle. You just got to look at it like your notes are your pieces, your stave is your kind of your board, and you're basically putting it together until you make something that makes sense or is what someone wants. So I've always just kind of taken it right down to the absolute basic with anything I've ever taught anyone or done myself. So it's the best way to be.
That is such a good way of looking at it. It's just splitting it in half and
because it's natural for anyone to just look at something on a piece of paper and go, "Oh, I can do that," but without actually really looking at it and analyzing what is there, you can't. No offense, like you can't do that. Like it just doesn't work. You've got to look at it in a sense of, right, okay, I've got to piece this together for it to make sense. So, I've done it with everything. Even it's the same thing with the whole kind of splitting the 1/8 notes into 2 4s. It's the same for splitting it into 2 8s for 16ths, And really and truly, I would say the same for quarter notes, but you're hitting the main beats. Do you know what I mean? They're the main ones. So you shouldn't really need to worry too much about quarter notes. But when you start, adding in your ands and your E's and your R's and all that kind of stuff, it really does help you to analyze where things sit, especially writing things out as well. When you break it in half, you can kind of get it written out halfway and think to yourself, okay, that's where all that sits. Now I'm going to do the second half, see where all that sits, and then I'll see the picture come to life. So it's basically just a case of, learning it's a step by step. It's a process. I think that's how I learned to read music as well, was with my teacher who was teaching me drums at a young age. That was one of the key things he taught me. So I think that's what I've always taken into account when I'm teaching people, when I'm learning something, just to break it down and develop it that way. Because I think if, we're in a modern day society where everyone just wants to get things done too quickly. And I think the best way to be is just do it in your own time. That's how I say. Do it in your own time. Don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Don't worry about what the J. Rod Sullivans are doing of the world. Don't worry about what the Thomas Langs are doing of the world. Be your own drummer. Do it in your own time. And eventually one day you'll sit back, you'll watch a video and go, I can do that. Because you've analysed it, you're taking your time to learn something, So that's how I would say,
Amazing. Yeah, and I know you're a big Eddie Thrower fan.
Mate, gotta love the Eds, man. Gotta love the Eds.
He has said in the past that he's overanalyzed things to the nth degree for Instagram, and then just a lot of the times not posted it. Like he's done 97 takes and then been like, no, it's not quite that one thing. Was like, and then he's just said, "Oh, screw it. This is not good enough." And
I think that's the day and age. This day and age with social media, I think that's just what's come about. Like when I first started out posting videos, drum videos and drum clips on social media, I was in that rut. I would say that he was in, which was always like, oh, it has to be perfect. It has to be
Guilty.
Yeah, no, but you do it. I know. I can speak for a lot of people, but you do it to yourself, because you know what? There's such an array of talent out there now. There's so many people out there that are phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. But then sometimes you see these people that, you know, they've just started out and they're growing. You know what I mean? And you see their first ever video they post where, you know, for someone who's like, I've always seen it. I've seen it, you know, I used to do it when I was younger. I don't do it so much anymore because I don't care. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm my own player. I have my own abilities. I'll play to my ability. Everyone else is the same. But back in the day, because I was a young drummer, and there were so many young drummers, and I thought, oh, you know, I can do that. I could do this. You know, you get a bit sort of, you know, ahead of the game a little bit, think you're the better one, and all this kind of thing. And you start looking at these drummers that are like posting a video, and you think, that's not good. Don't like that. You know what I mean? Like, I can do that better. You know what I mean? And I think it just becomes a natural thing for some people to just sit there and go, wait, hang on a second. I'm in that position. Because they've posted a video. Yeah, it might not be the best. But that's exactly how I did it. I posted a video, didn't care how many likes it got or who viewed it. It's what you do. You know, you just post a video and hope people like it. If they don't, who cares? You know? But I think such a society nowadays, especially in the drum community, it has become a really, really strong thing of like, unless you're doing this, well, no one cares. You're not good enough. Do you know what I mean? Like, and I think it's become such a strong thing. I think there is this element, like we were speaking about earlier, with chopping, drum chops, like every drummer, social media drummer, pretty much that I know of on a relatively decent level or higher level, chops.
Yeah.
Because for some reason it's become like a culture. Chopping is the way to be. If you want to be a drummer and you want to stand out and you want people to appreciate what you're doing, you got to chop. But I don't believe personally that should be the way we're going in this industry. I think it should be, you are your own drummer, you do what you do. Yes, you're going to be better at some things than someone else, but they're also going to be better at things that you're not, because you've obviously dove into a lot more rudiment playing and trying to chop and get your chops to like the best thing you can get. But you forgot about the fundamentals of what a rhythm section is, which is keeping it all together, you know, which we were talking about earlier. And I think, you know, the likes of Eddie, for example, you know, I've met Eddie a few times. I've been fortunate enough to do a couple of one-on-one sessions with Eddie in the past. And when you watch someone like that, you are in awe of people like that. You do watch and you think, wow, like, how do you do that? You know what I mean? It's just practice. It's practice, practice, and then you'll get better. But there is this, like I say, going back to the point I was making earlier, this social media kind of culture of like, unless you're chopping, no one cares what you're playing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I used to be that kind of person that had to worry about every inch of what the camera angle looked like. You know, what the lighting was like. What was it? And I started losing the kind of the player, or like what I was doing as a player. I started worrying about how I looked, and I think that becomes a really fun. I don't care anymore. Literally, like I post a video now, and I don't care if it's like sounds great or it don't. I'm playing and I'm doing and I'm showing progression. I'm showing natural progression. You know, there's a lot I still need to learn. There's a lot other people still need to learn. But those people that are kind of that 5-6 steps ahead of the game, for the people that are just starting out posting, that's what they want to see. They want to see that inspiration, but they don't want to see it in a kind of like, it has to be perfect way. It has to be just play to the music and enjoy it, have fun, put out whatever. Because at the end of the day, whether 10 people view it or 2,000 people view it, what difference does it make to you? Nothing. It's just 2,000 people over 10 people saw your video.
Yeah.
Doesn't make you better than everyone else just because you got 2,000 views. Doesn't make you. Do you know what I mean? It's that culture this day where it's like, you know, unless you're racking in millions and millions of views, you're a nobody. If you're racking in loads and loads of views, you're a somebody. If you're unbeatable and you're in the thousands upon thousands of streams, you're untouchable. No one's untouchable. At the end of the day, you're just good at what you do because you practiced and you developed. It's like Luke Holland. He's the perfect example of a drummer who has gone from having a shocking video editing look and a mix to someone with a phenomenal video and a phenomenal mix, and also gear like drums, cymbals. He's gone from having like cracked cymbals and crappy sounding dead drums to like a DW Collector's series with like minor cymbals. Do you know what I mean? He's like, he's the pinnacle of someone who's shown you true progression and development, and that's what I think social media should be about. I don't think anyone should worry about what they post. Just post it, because someone's going to look at your feed one day when you are at that point of really kind of bringing that engagement in from the social media background, and they're going to go back through your feed and they're going to see all those old videos you've done where in your mind you're sitting there being that critical person and going, wish I'd never posted that.
Yeah,
that don't look good. But really, that's showing them like how far you've come, how much practice you've done, and that's why they say practice makes perfect. But I think that stands in this industry for more. Practice does generally make perfect. So the more you show progression and everything you're showing as you're doing it, the better. The less you show that, and the more you kind of get ahead of the game and try to improve everything but you're playing. No, I hate to say it. I'm you know, a lot of drummers listen to this, or musicians might disagree with me, but to be honest with you, you're not going anywhere. Do you know what I mean? Because you've not shown progression. You've not shown that kind of what people want to see. People want to see you go from like understanding fundamentals to like being hot as anything on the drums. Do you know what I mean? Because you should show them that you can do these things, you know, and it takes years for people to get there. Do you know what I mean? Some have it naturally, some don't have it at all. But it doesn't mean that they're not good, and it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be respected. And that's why I think the great thing about this community on social media, I've met you through social media, you know, and I think, you know, it's great. I think it's such a great platform, and it's so nice because you, as drummers, you develop this community, you know, like, you know, I've met you through social media. I met a guy called Cardinal Cardona. I don't know if you've heard of him. Yeah,
David. He's coming on next week.
I used to work with Cardona. I used to help him with it. If you go on his profile and you see all his old videos in like where he's got like a purpley pearl kit and he looks like he's in a music shop, I used to help him film those. Those are the videos I used to help him film. So he's like a great example. He's gone from this kind of like guy who's doing what I'm doing to like now playing at like drum shows and like, you know, playing on big level, you know. So it's natural progression. That's what it's all about, you know. And it's such a great community. I've met so many people, you know, I've so many drummers. I've loved it. I think, and when you do get that little tight community of drummers, you'll just like, you no matter what you post, you always back each other. You know, you're always like, yeah, that was sweet, you know, and that was cool, that was wicked, you know, all that kind of thing, you know. And I think just whether you think it is or you don't, it doesn't matter. It's about showing support to those people, because we've all been in that situation where you start self-doubting what you put up on social media. But you should just, you know, as they say, you know, I would use a swear word normally right now, but I'm not going to. But, you know, F the haters, as they say. You know, just get on with it, mate. Just get on with it. Be your own person, enjoy it, and have fun while you do it. No one cares otherwise.
For sure.
That's it.
Yeah, and as you said, the beautiful thing about the drum community is the drum community is such a tight-knit unit. It's such a small industry and such a small world.
Massive. Yeah.
I mean, I've I've had the fortune of over the years meeting, whether it's been going to clinics or
Yeah,
even just bumping into, some of my drum heroes or big
yeah,
names.
mate,
And
massively.
I've just been like, wow, what a nice guy. But then I'm
Yeah,
like, why wouldn't he be? And
yeah,
obviously he's got a big name and all these
of course.
accomplishments, won awards, and
Yeah,
and maybe played main stages at drum shows and
yeah.
plays for big artists. But
Mm,
I'm like, and there's been time and time again where I've met these big names, but I've just gone away thinking, wow, they were so
mm,
nice. They took the time to have a chat. They were like
yeah.
Eddie. Going
Oh,
right
mate,
back to Eddie.
massive.
Every time I met him, he's been so humble and
Oh
so
man,
nice, and
he's the nicest guy.
he's
Such
such
a
a
nice
cool guy.
guy.
Yeah,
He's
yeah,
an absolute credit to the drum industry. He's an absolute credit to
100%.
the
Yeah,
modern day drummer. He is a,
yeah,
and again, he's just someone that's just had influence from Travis, people like that. He's got real big love for Travis and all that kind of stuff. And
yeah,
the guy's phenomenal. Like watching him play live and then watching him play. I'm a massive fan of his old band, Lower Than Atlantis.
LTA. Yeah,
I
yeah.
used to love.
Me too.
I absolutely loved that band because I used to love them from like the second album. I think I was following them
Yeah,
right till the end.
yeah,
And just the progression in his playing through that band into now playing with like people like Busted and
yeah,
all that kind of stuff. It's phenomenal, man. He's such a, but just that's what makes it great is when you meet people like that on the level he's at. You'd expect someone like that to have a little bit of a bit of an ego, bit of a kind of honestly, hands down, loveliest bloke you'll ever meet.
Yeah,
Zero ego, such a kind guy, and will make time and for anyone. Do you know what I mean? So it's great.
Yeah.
It's really is great. So yeah, what a great guy.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Absolutely.
Mm.
So Jack, I know you do drum teching as well. Is that right?
I do. Yes. Yeah.
Yes. So tell me a little bit more about that.
So I've done a little bit of my fair share of drum teching. Just more on I've not really had the kind of opportunity to dive into the bigger level in the mainstream yet. I'd love to. I think that's something that I'd love to look at doing next. Would be to kind of find a way into sort of teching for the big leagues, as they say. I've kind of just done it for like sort of friends and people in the local circuits that are of a good level where they can afford to pay someone to come in and do it, but not of that kind of massive level like you're Holding Absence or your Bring Me the Horizons or your people like that. They've got the big people, or your Eddies, for example. Like I think, if I'm honest with you, I think his drum tech is a guy. I don't actually know his real name, but I know his Instagram's handled like AAA Drums or something like that. But that's like a dream role of mine would be to drum tech for someone like Eddie Thrower. I think that's like kind of the level I'd love to be at. But yeah, my teching compared to my kind of my studio session stuff and my live session stuff, my drum teching kind of is on a bit of a back burner because I do a lot more of that than I actually get around to doing drum tech wise. But it is something that I'd love to dive into a little bit more. So for anyone listening and you're looking for a drum tech, you know how to find one.
Yeah. And with drum teching, was that something that with like tuning and setting up drums, I guess that was just something that by default you had skills you'd acquired through actually being a drummer yourself?
Yeah, I think it was also, I think I acquired them through doing the drums myself, but I also acquired them, as I said, spoke about earlier with David. We used to work in a music shop in London, and it was a drum shop, drum and percussion shop, and we'd spend all day pretty much talking gear and talking drums, and you'd have people come in and being like, oh, I just bought this like lovely DW Collector's drum kit, and I just and you're like, oh, okay, cool, and they're like, yeah, I just can't seem to get this drum tuned right, and just and you'd kind of just like hang out with them, talk drums and tune their drum at the same time, and you kind of do it while you're talking, and then you just kind of tune it to like the ear. You tune it to what you would kind of want that particular drum to sound like. And I think there's like nowadays it's gotten to a point where everyone needs to tune it to a particular sort of note, or like you need to do this, which I'm all for. I don't think that's a wrong thing to do. But I do think it should come sort of like when you're doing it, it should naturally just come to the ear. What you kind of get that drum sounding where it should for the particular drum you're doing. You know, floor toms I find harder than rack toms, because I think rack toms are sort of, you know, my kind of tuning process is having the bottom head slightly, you know, a step higher than top head. But you know, so the batter side is more down tuned compared to the bottom, just to give it that more attack and that more, you know, punch. But the top, you kind of, you know, you get that sort of that nice rebound, but you sort of as I call it, the wobble from the head at the same time, you know, so you get that real sort of nice rebound off of it. But yeah, the process is just, for me, was just doing so much of it at the drum shop and tuning things up and trying it out, practicing basically. It was just twiddling with drums and seeing what sounded good and trying it really high, trying it really low, trying to, you know. And I think over time, when you start listening to music, you start developing that kind of more of an ear for how certain drums should sound for certain styles of music that you're playing. I also think it's quite nice when you can get just a generic mix on your drums with just a basic sort of standard tuning, and it just sounds great for everything. I think that's a great thing. You know, I think so. You know, I do a lot of that in my own videos, so it's just a generic tune by ear, kind of what sounds right, what kind of cuts through and sort of really has a nice tone in the mic. Obviously, a lot of fundamentals into that, mics, placement, all that kind of thing helps. But as just a generic basic kind of tuning, just whatever kind of naturally feels right and sounds good together once you kind of alternate between them. So yeah, with drum teching, that was kind of how when I'm doing teching, that's what I do, is just keep it sort of to the ear and what style of music I might be sort of tuning that kit for. Or if it's specific tuning, then obviously I'll go for the specific tuning. But I think it just all comes from like personal preference for me. Yeah, it's just what you would kind of, I know some drummers, when you're on that bigger league level, want it sound in particular way, but obviously you practice that and you get taught, you know, you go in there and you learn how they roll with what they want. But for just a generic sort of level of stuff, just getting a kit sounding nice is the aim, really. You know, you don't kind of, I never used to be able to do it, and then just through working at the shop and doing a lot of playing myself, just built it up, really. So that's it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I guess it also depends on the room, you know, like when whether it's at a gig or a practice room, it depends on the room.
I think studio, again, probably the worst place to tune, I find, in the studio. Is probably the most hardest place to get a right tune in, because I think sort of everything kind of takes into account room, mic placement, all that, you know. I think I had it once before. I was doing a studio session and I tuned the drums, started playing, done about 3 takes, and then the sound guy was like in the talkback mic saying, "Oh, I think something slightly like detuned itself, or is slightly out of tune or something like that." And I'm thinking to myself, really? I was like, why? Like, what's happened here? Like, I don't understand. Like that. And then we realised that it just got really warm in the studio, and the heads had just decided to just kind of like, just sort of like get really warm, and just kind of naturally, when things get warm, they expand. So things just kind of, they lose their tension, they lose everything, you know. So I was a bit like, God, I've never experienced that before. But when you do, there's a lot to take into account. In live, I wouldn't worry too much. You know, it's whatever the person wants or personal preference, and getting the right sound for that kit live. Studio is very particular, I think. I've only learned that in the last sort of however long, you know. I could never used to be able to get rid of the that horrible undertone you get when you tune a floor tom, the little ring, the little buzz that you always get when you try and tune. You always get that kind of like that humming noise that you can, and you always think to yourself, you know, you put moon gel and you do this and you put this and you and it just doesn't seem to go away. And for a long time I was like, what do I do here? Like, I don't, you know, and just kind of, do I deal with it? What do I do? And then I was in a studio session and speaking to another drummer once, and he went, do you know what I did? I went, no. He went, you know, cotton balls. And I was like, yeah. And he was like, just get like 4 or 5 cotton balls in a clump and just take the top head off and throw them in on top of the bottom head, and then tune it out. And it goes, and you just, what it does is it just counteracts with the bottom head to stop that vibe, that resonant head going mental. I was like, yeah, okay. And I did it. I don't think I've had that problem since. It's mental how just one little thing can just, you know. And I do it now. I've got like my little drum tech kit, and I've got like 2 bags of cotton balls, and like I'll be at the and the guy will look at me and go, why have you got cotton balls in you? And I'll be like, trust me, you'll realize why I got them when you see what I'm going to do to your thing. I said, do you have them in there already? He's like, no. What do you mean? And then because he says no, I'm like, yeah, you I'll show you. Do you know what I mean? And then you show them, and then their mind's blown. They're like, oh wow, okay, I prefer that. Let's do that next time. I'm like, there you go. Yeah. You know? And then after that, you never have to take them out. You just tune it because they're just keeping them in there. Do you know what I mean? You don't have to worry. So yeah. You know, it's good. It's just different experiences allow you to try out different things, and I think that's how you get better at, you know, drum teching as a whole. Is just trial and error. Really, trial and error. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. Our mutual friend Justin, shout out to Justin.
Big time Justin Woodward. What a man.
Yeah, he's the guy, man.
Yeah.
He actually showed me that trick with tissue paper.
Oh yeah.
So he was the one who showed me that.
That's something someone else. I think it might have been Justin actually that said that, something about tissue paper. But yeah, I think I'd already. I think it might have actually even been Justin that spoke to me about the cotton balls thing. I think that's maybe where I got the idea from. But yeah, like I've shown other people that now, and they're like, "Wow, that's just such a great way of thinking how to do that. Like get rid of that noise, you know." But yeah, no, shout outs to Justin, mate. What an absolute legend, you know. That guy just honestly, I've just recently changed my mix that I do with my home studio with him, and I'm well excited to get some videos out of that. But yeah, he just knows what he's doing. That's the great thing about it, you know. You can call upon him and be like, dude, what's going on here? I don't know what's going on here. Like, you know, I had a bit of a latency issue the other day, and within about 10 minutes it was gone, because I just asked him one simple question and sent him a couple of pictures and videos of the system, and he went, yep, I found it. That's your problem. And I'm like, mate, you know, that would have taken me months to figure out. Do you know what I mean? But like, it's just amazing. Yeah, he's, you know, credit to the man. You know what I mean? He's a hard-working fella, and he knows what he's doing. So yeah, big up you, Justin.
Yeah, Justin's the best, man.
That's it.
Yeah, definitely one of the hardest working sort of, you know, solid people that I've met. He's kind of like I call him like the silent engineer. Because like you don't know who he's working with, and then suddenly you see him getting tagged in like Sleep Tokens drummers, like mixed live mixes, or like Ash Green from Holding Absence live mixes. Yeah. Yo, you're making some movements, Justin. What's going on? Man. And he's so humble about it. It's frustrating.
Yeah. Nah, man. He's the most humblest guy going, but the great thing about it is like when you're that like that great at knowing all that stuff and being able to do what he does, you know, the sort of people you'll connect with and be able to do things for is unbelievable, you know. And you know, it's just so nice that even though he's doing things for people like, you know, the Sleep Token and Ash from Holding Absence, he's still got the time for the little people. You know, he's still got the time for the little guys like me, and you know, little guys like yourself, and you know, we're all out there, we're all making movements, we're all doing our bits and pieces. You know, we're trying to get there, but you know, it's guys like that help you that one step further, I think. And again, the networking side of things, phenomenal. You know, like the people that he will follow him might not follow you, and then if he's helping you with your mix, and you're tagging each other and sharing, and his people see you, and then it's like more people for you to see, you know, to see your videos, and you know, it's great. You know, that's the great thing about it. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So we're coming to the end of this podcast.
Oh,
is there anything
sweet.
is there anything you want to plug, or what have you got coming up in 2024?
Ooh, I've got a lot of things. I've got some shows coming up. I've got my own band. If you're into your alt rock music, they're called Blockade. You find us on Instagram. We've got a new single coming out in March, I think. Shooting a music video this month for that. Got a couple of gigs scattered throughout the year so far, up to about June time. I think we'll have some more in between that and after as well. But yeah, we're just going to be working on a lot of writing, finishing off the material we've been working on and releasing the tracks we already have to come out. So yeah, if you like your alt rock music and you want to check us out, give us a little spin. Blockade. We'd love it. We love the support, and we're just a small independent band trying to make the big leagues like everybody else. But I just, for everyone listening, just keep up the practice, keep doing what you love, keep having fun with it, and don't worry about what anyone else is doing. Just be yourself and stay true to your talent. Carry on. Yeah,
dude, awesome.
No
thank you for your time, man. I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it, and hopefully we'll do another one again soon.
Hopefully. I feel like we could talk for another hour.
Yeah, same, man. Same. Cheers, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you so much, man.
Thank you, dude.
Give me money.